Hey, y'all, each week on The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, we ask big questions and share hot takes about the pop culture we love.
Now that we have YouTube, we don't need any more biopics. If they've been alive such that I can watch them on YouTube, I don't need it.
I don't think that music is getting worse. I think y'all just don't listen to artists who aren't in the mainstream.
Taylor Swift, retire. It's time to retire.
The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube.
After about 5 minutes of just sort of trying to speak through heaving sobs, he goes, "I think you might have depression."
You're listening to Life in 7 Songs. From the San Francisco Standard, I'm your host, Sophie Behrman. Our guest today is Cord Jefferson, the writer and director behind the Oscar-winning film American Fiction, which, if you haven't seen yet, you should go watch. The film, a screen adaptation of Percival Everett's novel Erasure, is Cord's directorial debut, and it tells the story of a Black professor and writer named Monk Ellison, whose literary career is failing, in part because his books aren't considered Black enough to sell well. Cord Jefferson began his career as a journalist, writing about race and culture before transitioning into TV writing, and has said that just 50 pages into Erasure, he knew he was meant to turn the book into a film. Cord Jefferson, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So just take me back to that moment of being 50 pages into Erasure. How were you feeling?
It was really thrilling because I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but the feeling that I was getting was that it was as if somebody had written a novel especially for me. And the character, Monk Ellison, the protagonist of the novel, his life and my life were so similar in so many ways that it just felt like, oh my God, it felt kind of fated that I sort of found this book.
What are some of those similarities you were seeing?
Oh my God. So it's about a Black writer living in Los Angeles.
Where you live?
Yeah, where I live. His brother lives in Arizona, where I'm from. His family is from DC, where I've also lived. There's a reference to William and Mary, which is the small college that I went to that nobody ever talks about. He's got 2 siblings. I've got 2 siblings. We have a push and pull dynamic like the siblings in the book. We have a very overbearing father figure. I love him very much, but he is very overbearing. I think he would admit that. And the overbearing father figure in the book really resembled my father. Monk moves home to take care of his ill mother. I had moved home to take care of my ill mother toward the end of her life. It just sort of, the Venn diagrams between our 2 lives was becoming a circle the more and more I read. It really did feel a little freakish and eerie.
It's kind of creepy almost,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it was strange. It really was.
And that's just sort of the personal side, because I'm guessing were there also some similarities that you were tying between his work life and your work experience?
Absolutely. I mean, just the expectations that people have for what Black life looks like and what Black writers should write about, and sort of what is interesting to Black readers and what is interesting to other people about Black life. There was sort of just all these sort of rigid rules around what Black writers can and can't do that are, obviously frustrating if you're a Black writer, because people are telling you what your life and work should look like. And so, 3 months before I found the novel Erasure, I had received a script back from an executive that told me that one of the characters in the script who was Black needed to be Blacker. And I told them, I will indulge that note if you are willing to tell me what it means to be Blacker. If somebody's going to sit across from me at a table and say, here's what you need to do to make the character Blacker. And of course they never did that. And so, but just those frustrations that he was feeling in the book about sort of the limitations that people put on Black life and Black creativity, that just really resembled my struggles in both journalism and fiction writing, actually.
So I love the first song that you chose because it takes us back to the very beginning of your story, which is always helpful. But also it has a connection to Jeffrey Wright, who you cast as Monk in American Fiction. So tell me about this first song.
So this first song is Flamenco Sketches off of the Miles Davis album Kind of Blue. My parents used to play this for me in the womb. My father would put this vinyl record on and then put headphones on my mother's belly when she was pregnant with me. And they said that when I was born, that all they needed to do was put on Kind of Blue and I would stop crying. And this is my favorite song off the record. I love it so much. And the first time that I'd ever seen it used in film was in Basquiat. My favorite scene in the movie is just this very quiet, contemplative moment where it's Jeffrey as Jean-Michel in a studio, which is just kind of like this basement apartment, and it's just this big open area, and he's just painting. It's just him alone painting, and flamenco sketches plays over the scene. And that was the first time that I'd seen Jeffrey Wright act before. I think I was in high school, and I just fell in love with him, and I've followed his work ever since. And so, yeah, it was an interesting full circle moment for me to sort of finally work with him. And when I was sort of like thinking about the songs that I was going to send to you, it really did give me pause and make me wonder if there was something about seeing Jeffrey with that song playing over him that sort of like, it just made me latch on to him. And somehow he imprinted in my head in some deep way that is like Pavlovian because of my parents playing music before I was out of the womb.
Did you ever tell him this? Have you told him?
No, I haven't. I've never told him this, actually. Even now, there's no song in the world that makes me feel more at ease. It's just like pure beauty to me. I don't know, that there's just something about that really hits me every time. I can hear it over and over and over again.
Were your mom and dad big jazz fans?
My dad 100%, my mom less so. My mom liked jazz, but she certainly wasn't sort of like a connoisseur like my father. My dad was a trumpet player when he was younger. He put himself through undergrad playing trumpet in the school marching band. And then when he graduated college, he sold his trumpet to help put himself through law school. But he sort of like maintained his love of jazz all throughout my life and gave that to my brothers and I. So my brothers and I have both sort of, all three of us have a real deep, we're in the midst of arguing about who's going to get my dad's jazz collection when he dies. Right now.
Before it's even happened.
Yeah. No, we try to make sure to have that conversation when my dad's not around.
Totally.
But it's happened definitely before in front of it.
It's not like a matter of splitting it. It's like someone wants the full.
Exactly.
I love it. So, okay, you mentioned growing up in Arizona. What was it like growing up in Tucson?
Pros and cons. Looking back, before we settled in Tucson, we lived overseas in Saudi Arabia and Greece for about 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And we moved back to Tucson when I was about 6 years old. So I was born in Tucson, and then we moved almost immediately, and then I moved back right when I was sort of about starting school. And I think that I always knew that I wanted to travel the world, and I always felt kind of confined in Tucson. Unfortunately, it felt like this is a small town and I got to get out of here. And in actuality, I remember talking to a friend years later when I was, probably 29, 30, and she said, where are you from? We had just met, and I said, I'm from this small town called Tucson. And she said, Tucson's not a small town. I'm from a town in Iowa with 5,000 people in it. That's a small town. Tucson's not a small town. And I looked it up. And at that point, Tucson was like the 32nd biggest city in America. So it's like, oh, okay. I guess you're right. It's not that tiny of a town. But to me, it felt really small and confined at the time. And I think it was just due to the fact that I didn't see a lot of people like me. I remember asking my parents, like, if I could change my name to Frank, like, because I just wanted a normal name. I'm already this like black kid in sort of like a town of no black kids, and now I have this weird name too, which sort of like everybody leaps on. And I was like electrical cord and umbilical cord and bungee cord. My parents sort of like did their best to introduce me to black culture too. That sort of like was because they knew that there wasn't a lot of black culture in Tucson. So don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty positive. Like I was the only 7-year-old in the theater to see Do the Right Thing, because my parents sort of were like, you gotta, this is apparently sort of like a great new film by this great black director, so we're going to see it. But my brothers got me into rap music very early on in my life, particularly my middle brother, Derek. And so Derek started giving me rap records when I was 11 or 12. And I remember him saying, like, you've got to hide these from mom and dad. You can't let mom and dad know that I gave you these albums because they're very like they had, you know, the parental warning labels. And so, like, to me, it was like, my parents don't understand this and I understand this, and it's speaking to me and not them. And that was important to me.
So what song did you choose?
I chose The What by Notorious B.I.G. from his first album, Ready to Die. And it's a song that features Method Man from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Anything in the song, like lyrics or sentiment?
Yeah. It's a very angry song, you know. The chorus starts, fuck the world, don't ask me for shit.
Fuck the world, don't ask me for shit. Everything you get, you got to work hard for it. Honey, shake your hip, you don't stop. Them niggas pack the clip, keep on. Verse 2. Coming with that OE brew, met the cab,
this record, I'm pretty sure, came out when I was 12. So those are pretty extreme sentiments for a 12-year-old to have. But they felt dangerous, and it felt like scary. And it also, you know, when you're a kid, at least me, I had this kind of like impotent rage. I was an angry kid for any number of reasons. You know, I was, like I said, I was a black kid in sort of like a town with no black people. I felt like an outsider. My parents got divorced. I had never met my grandparents on my mother's side, my maternal grandparents, because they disowned my mother for marrying my father for being black. And so sort of she was disowned by her family. And so I used to send them letters, and they would return the letters unopened.
What did the letters say, if you don't mind sharing?
They were along the lines of like just introducing myself almost, because I had never met these people before. And so it was like, you know, I'm Cord. It'd be really nice to meet you. Like, you're my family. It was just always kind of like letters of introduction. And I wrote them until I was about 9, and then I stopped writing them. And that just because it felt like sort of like futile, because they always returned them. But my mother sent letters also, and they would not return those. And there's a very haunting story for my family. At my mother's funeral, my uncle, her brother, told us that one day he had gone into his father's bedroom. This is sort of like years after he and my mother sort of had stopped speaking. And he said my grandfather was sitting on his bed with a box of my mother's letters, reading them kind of in silence by himself. And he was sort of like just sitting there sort of sadly going over sort of like this correspondence that he never responded to from my mom. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And I think that it was a thing that I don't think I really understood how deeply it had affected me until, you know, because as a kid, to feel that sense of rejection from your own family, you know, to sort of like feel that sense of like, oh, this, like, even my own family doesn't like me and thinks that like I'm weird. That must have sort of like given me some sense of alienation immediately, you know, just sort of like your own family won't even talk to you. And so I think that looking back, that was probably one of the sort of origins of the anger that I felt, certainly.
So thinking about you as a young man, kind of an angry teen, did you ever get into trouble? Like, or was it very interior, or did you know, what's the worst thing you did?
That is and that's sort of like a good segue into the next song. It was mostly interior. I was a rule follower. I sort of like, I got good grades. I did what my parents told me to do. And I played on the football team because my dad wanted a quarterback for his son. And so I forced myself to play football for a couple seasons. I was terrible at it. And then I got to high school and I started hanging out with these guys who were in bands and were specifically in punk bands. We're playing a lot of punk music. And I started sort of like, I saw this bridge between our two worlds where it was like, these guys are angry too. You know, it's like that these guys and the way that they're exercising their anger is also through music, but it's also a different kind of music that I haven't really been exposed to before, because like the heaviest rock and roll my dad ever played really was like Jethro Tull, like with a flute. Like that was like the heaviest rock and roll my dad had. And so it was the first taste of kind of like being irreverent. It was the first taste of like, maybe these people with the power are not right. I think that was such an important lesson for me that I sort of hadn't had yet, was that like it's okay to disobey. And in fact, not only is it okay to disobey, sometimes it's the right thing to do.
This leads us to Jawbreaker. It's a Bay Area punk band, and you chose the song Boxcar.
Yeah.
How come?
I listened to a lot of punk in high school, but Jawbreaker was the first band that has stayed with me, that I sort of really fell in love with. And this song in particular, it's actually sort of like about the status quo within punk music. The song starts, "You're not punk and I'm telling everyone, save your breath, I never was one." It's about this guy who, even in this punk scene, right, which is supposed to be sort of, irreverent and outside the norm and sort of like allowing of difference and allowing of weirdos and allowing of differences of opinion, even in that scene there has become this kind of status quo and this rigid sense of rules. Here's how you be a good punk and here's how you be a bad punk. And it's this sort of rejection of like, no, that's not what this is about. Like what this is about is letting people be themselves. Like that's actually what punk rock is about. And sort of he says, "I'm coloring outside your guidelines. I was passing out when you were passing out your rules." And so again, there's this theme of the music in my life, especially sort of like in my early days, of this kind of like rebellious spirit and this kind of like, no, like you don't tell me what to do. I do what I want to do. And so this one in particular really resonated with me when I was younger.
When we come back, Cord reaches the pinnacle of his career and yet hits rock bottom. Stay with us. Hey everyone, I want to recommend a podcast. Hard Knocks is a show about resilience, self-discovery, and finding meaning after chaos, hosted by Amanda Knox. Each week, Amanda sits down with fascinating guests, writers, thinkers, artists, to explore how we learn, grow, and rebuild ourselves after life knocks us down. Amanda brings humor, honesty, and hard-earned perspective to every conversation, drawing on her own experience of being wrongfully convicted and rebuilding her life. Amanda was a guest on Life in 7 Songs in one of our most moving episodes, opening up about how music became a lifeline during her years of wrongful imprisonment. On our show, she spoke candidly about turning pain into wisdom and also about how we're all so much more than our worst moments. If you liked that episode, you'll love her show, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Jesse Alejandro Cottrell.
And I'm Emily Dreyfus, and this is Pacific Standard Time.
We have stories from all over the state of California, all the big battles that are happening here.
Prop 50,
housing affordability,
tech,
and immigration.
And we're really excited to bring you the stories about how California is dealing with what it means to be alive in 2025.
Subscribe to Pacific Standard Time, a new weekly show from the San Francisco Standard.
We'll have new episodes every Wednesday starting November 19th, wherever you get your podcasts.
I think I heard you say at some point that your mom, years and years later told you that she knew as early as elementary school that you'd end up as a writer.
Yeah.
Was there, had you written something, or I don't know, is there anything that might have tipped her off?
I had a facility with language relatively early. My mother read to me all the time when I was a child. She actually said, you're going to be able to read before you get to school. That was her goal. And so my house was always full of books. Her and my father were always reading. What tipped her off to that, she said, was that in 3rd grade, I got an assignment to write a memoir. We all had to sort of write and illustrate our own life stories. And she said that she'd never seen me more excited about a project than that one. She said she sort of I lit up in a way that I had never lit up before. And then I continued. I was a good writer in middle school, and then in high school was the first time I joined the school paper, and that was the first time it felt like something clicked. It was oh, this is maybe what I like. This is maybe what I'm good at. And then when I was in college, I founded this literary magazine with some friends of mine at the time. And so I always kept it as a hobby, but it wasn't until a couple years out of graduation of college that I really started to consider it like, okay, maybe this can be a career.
So moving to your college years, you were listening to Steely Dan, My Old School. Tell me the story of that song.
Steely Dan had been sort of played in my house when I was growing up, but I had never really given it. It always sounded like easy listening to me. Then I went to college. I went to William and Mary in Virginia. It's this small school. You know, it was also even more homogenous than my high school because now, like, gone are the Latinos. It was very, very white. And so I went there and it was like, there was all these kids with lacrosse sticks. I was like, what's lacrosse? And they had like swoopy hair. And they were listening to this guy that I'd never heard of called Dave Matthews. It's where I first heard of Fish. You know, I started listening to some of this music, and I will admit that I do have a slight soft spot in my heart for Dave Matthews to this day. Like, I will every now and again, when I'm alone, put on Dave Matthews and sort of like listen to it a little bit.
There's a moment for it.
Yeah, there is a moment for it, and it makes me feel nostalgic, but most of that music didn't really stick with me, but there was a couple people that I became friends with in college, really close friends, who were really into Steely Dan. And I sort of gave it a second chance. So Steely Dan is now my favorite band. I'm obsessed with them.
Wow.
And I've seen them probably more than I've seen any other live band before. And this is not my favorite Steely Dan song, actually, but there's not really a lot of William and Mary references in popular culture because it's such a small school and sort of like obscure in many ways. But for whatever reason, Steely Dan in the song My Old School, the first verse of the song is all about this incident in which they got kicked out of school for drugs. And then they say, whoa, no, William and Mary won't do now. Oh, yeah.
Well, I did not think the girl could be so rude. And I never
Going back to my old school. Imagine just sort of like being an angry, drunk young person at 19 and like a song screaming, I'm never coming back to this place. A place that you've sort of like grown to loathe. It was just, it was so pure at that time in my life. It was what I needed to hear.
So after college, speaking of kind of forging your own path, you mentioned, school paper in high school. You pursued journalism as a career.
Yeah.
How did you end up in that?
I fell into it, if I'm being honest. I moved to LA with just no plan whatsoever and no real job. I just was like, well, I'm going to go to LA and try to figure it out. And so at a 4th of July party, actually, I met this guy. We were just chatting, and he asked me what I did. And I said, I work at this nonprofit, but, I think that I'm interested in writing. I probably should give writing a shot. And he said, well, it turns out that I'm the editor of a magazine, of this music magazine. He asked me to write a 500-word profile of this indie country artist named Jolie Holland, and he paid me $50 for it. And that was the first time I was paid for any published writing. And I sort of went from there. It started getting more and more freelance gigs. And at a certain point, it reached a time when it was like, I'm making as much money freelancing as I am at my day job, which I hate. So I was like, well, if you're going to make no money, at least make no money doing something that doesn't want to make you come home and claw your eyes out every night. So I moved to New York in 2015 to just become a full-time freelance journalist.
And you chose a song kind of representing those really early days. You were broke all the time, and you were just kind of like, so what did you bring? I
chose Naive Melody by the Talking Heads. The lyrics that really stood out to me were never for money, always for love. And I was, as you said, very broke. When I first moved to New York, I was making a $400 a month stipend, and I had all these friends who were thriving. And here I was barely getting by. And, I would see these people and I'd be embarrassed. I would feel embarrassed. A creative life is also one that is full of times when you're like, maybe I should just quit this. There was a lot of sort of dark nights of the soul when I'm like, am I going to wake up and I'm going to be 47 and still asking friends for rent money and sort of like not able to feed myself. Like, is this what I'm destined for? But that lyric, never for money, always for love, it's sort of like I looked at it not in a sort of like way of like a love song, but in a way of like, that was sort of like became this ethos for me of like, don't sell out, don't sell out, don't sell out, keep doing it, like keep doing it. This is what you love to do. I actually got Never for Money, Always for Love tattooed on my arm because it did sort of become at some point like just a constant refrain in my head. It's so gorgeous. I went and saw the David Byrne Broadway show. When they started playing that, I started crying just because also it was like the same weekend that the Watchmen episode that I wrote was premiering, and I was in New York, and it was like my career was finally working, and that I'm actually getting a little emotional right now thinking about it, but that felt like, God, like 20 years later, finally the money met the love, and that was, it felt like a huge sigh of relief in a certain way.
Yeah. I mean, to tell yourself that refrain for so many years and then to have, a week where it pays off, I can imagine why you feel emotional.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of transitions into where I wanted to go next, which is, when you won the Emmy for The Watchmen, you sort of famously now thanked your therapist in your speech. When did you realize, though, that you needed help and therapy? And I guess was there kind of like a rock bottom moment for you?
Yeah, it was in the year 2018. It was the best year of my entire career. I was sort of like working on these like shows that I really loved and working with people that I had really admired. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my entire life. I was living back in LA where I wanted to be. And so sort of like externally, it was like life is good. Like life is beautiful. Like things are going great. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't get myself to feel that way. I would cry at random moments. I would cry in the shower alone. I would cry in my car alone. I was drinking way, way, way too much. It was also 2 years after my mother had died. So I really hadn't sort of like fully grieved her. That year I went out and found this therapist, Ian, who I've been with now for it'll be 7 years next year. I'll never forget, I sat down in our very first session and he said, "So what can I help you with?" And I tried to say something and I just immediately started weeping. And
I've been there.
Yeah, and after about like 5 minutes of just sort of like trying to speak through like heaving sobs, he goes, "I think you might have depression." Another thing that my mother actually told me when I was 19, my mother told me that she thought I was clinically depressed. And I thought...
You just dismissed it at the time?
Yeah, because I was like, I get out of bed, I exercise, I sort of like can keep down, I can hold a job, I go to class, like, except for when I don't. but like I do all this stuff that to me, depression was like, you can't get out of bed and you sit around in sort of like your sweatpants all day eating chips and like, or like not eating at all and just like suffering in bed. And so to me it was like that. But Ian was the first guy who's like, it doesn't have to be that you can't get out of bed. He's like, it's like, in fact, think about what your life could be like if you didn't have that hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
So I really started working real seriously with him about that. And then I started taking meds 2 years ago, and I'm such a different person now. It is kind of, it shocks even me.
And you have a song for this moment.
Oh yeah, so Sheryl Crow, If It Makes You Happy. I used to think that I hated Sheryl Crow, but this song, for whatever reason, came back to me in like 2018 when I was really going through it. I saw a friend perform this at karaoke, and it was like the first time that I sort of like had to see the lyrics. And when she says, "If it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. If it makes you happy, then why the hell are you so sad?"
If it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. If it makes you happy, then why the hell are you so sad?
even now, like I'm tearing up a little, like because that really was such a revelation for me. It's just like if you keep pretending that as if you're happy and trying to sort of like pretend that this life that you're living is making you happy, then like, you know, you're going to crash, either literally or figuratively. And so like if it makes you happy, you need to figure out like why actually you're so damn sad all the time.
I just want to say it really does feel like your whole life put you in a place to, you know, find that book. And I don't know, there's just so much full circle, but like you couldn't, I don't think, have directed American Fiction if not for everything we've talked about.
I totally agree. It is in many ways like the culmination of like my life's work. And I was confident before that I made it that I was never going to get to make anything of my own. I had sort of like been rejected so many times in television that I felt like, okay, it's not for me. And so far be it from me to criticize anybody for needing to keep a roof over their head or food on their table, but it's never too late. I made my first movie and I'm 42. And so I would just say that as long as you love it, keep doing it.
So it sounds like you've gone through quite a lot over the last few years, winning an Oscar, lots of self-discovery. And all of that makes me think about your mom's death too, though, because, you know, she wasn't able to see that. And I guess I'm curious what that's been like for you.
Well, I think that's something that, so there's a line in my film. There's a scene in which Monk talks to his brother Cliff. It's towards the end of the film and they're at a wedding. And they sort of like find this time alone together. And Cliff is his younger brother, played by Sterling K. Brown. And Cliff has recently come out of the closet. He's sort of like in his late 40s and he's got a wife. Well, he had a wife. He's got 2 kids and he's recently divorced and sort of like finding himself in sort of like in his new open sexuality and figuring out what he wants to be. And their father's dead. And he says to his brother, he says to Monk, I've been thinking a lot about how Dad died not knowing I'm gay, and sort of like that makes me real sad that he never really knew me. And that's me speaking to myself. It's about my mother. And, you know, it was no surprise that in 2018, you know, decades later, I was still trying to hide my feelings and was still trying to hide my emotions from everybody and still lying and sneaking around and obfuscating, because that is sort of like what I did when I was a kid too. It was like I was hiding my anger, hiding my resentment, hiding all these things, hiding my disappointment at my grandparents not meeting me, hiding my disappointment at my parents getting divorced, hiding my disappointment at feeling like I didn't really understand my dad and didn't really feel close to him at all because he was so emotionally distant. So there was all these things that I was just holding on to so tightly. And I do feel like my mother knew me well and that we were close and had a good relationship, but there's stuff about me that my mother didn't know and now she'll never know. And that really makes me sad.
Your last song kind of touches on a lot of these themes: regret, fear, learning to live with it, love.
Yeah.
What'd you choose?
I chose Ben's My Friend by Sun Kill Moon. I just feel like it's such a good summation of where I was in my life. So I was like 40. I had figured some of my shit out, but I was still sort of like haunted by a lot of the stuff and regret. There's always going to be sort of like a sense of loss. Like I'm never going to fully get over my mom dying. And my dad's getting older. My dad's in his 80s now, and he just had knee surgery, and he's walking with a cane now, and my brothers are aging. And then like if I'm lucky and I live long, then there's going to be a lot more grief coming my way, you know? And so there's just this kind of like throb of understanding that adults have, of just these things that sort of like exist in the back of your mind that are never going to go away. And you just learn to live with that. I've just never heard a song that I think better encapsulates what it's like to grow up and sort of like what it's like to finally become an adult.
She said I seemed distracted and asked what was going on with me. I said I can't explain it, it's a middle-aged thing. She said okay and ate her eggs Benedict. And I looked at the walls cluttered with sports bar shit. Sports bar shit.
It just feels like a real, like this is a song for adults, like adults understand this. And then those things are sandwiched by him saying like, my mom is good, but she sounded out of breath. I worry so much about her. I worry to death. And it's like,
it's just adulthood, man.
Exactly. It's just like, it's just, this is what it's like.
My life.
Exactly. And that is like, that to me is just, everything at once, that's what it's like to be an adult, is just, it's everything at once. You realize that it just all comes at you and you've got to sort of like take it. But one of the things that this podcast has really helped me understand is, like, I always knew that music was a big part of my life, obviously since I was in the womb, but I think that this has really helped me see how much it's shaped my perspective and my outlook and shaped some of my attitudes and behaviors. Wow. This was very emotionally satisfying. I don't normally cry in interviews. This was nice. It was cathartic.
Cord Jefferson, thank you so much for your time.
This is my honor. Thank you so much. What a privilege.
Life in 7 Songs is a production from the San Francisco Standard. This episode was produced by me, Sophie Behrman, and our senior producer, Jasmine Morris. Our executive producers are Griffin Gaffney and John Steinberg, and this episode was mixed by Michelle Lanz. Our theme music is by Kate Davis and Zubin Hensler. Clark Miller created our show art. Our music consultant is Sarah Tembekshian. You can find this guest's full playlist at sf.news/Spotify. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.